Good morning from the Lavender Bergamot Kitchen, and today we're going to be talking about caring for yourself and others in the kitchen. And one of my absolute favorite ways to do that is to make sure that my freezer is full of really quick, easy things that I can make for everybody to eat. When people think about freezer cooking, often what comes to mind is a giant casserole of lasagna, which you need to defrost in the fridge ahead of time, or takes hours and hours to bake. What I'm talking about is really doing smaller things, smaller portions, and also ingredients. And so the way that I do that is I could have a whole day's worth of meals from our freezer. And breakfast is really important that I have these things on hand for breakfast. My daughter loves pancakes. And so what I do is I make a big batch of whole grain pancakes on the weekend, and then I put them in the freezer, and I have them for a few weeks, depending on how long it takes her to go through them. I just microwave them real quick. Same thing with waffles. I have a little mini waffle maker that I, again, just make a batch of waffles, put them in the freezer. We've got waffles whenever we want them. I also really love, this was the first thing I started doing when I started putting a lot more stuff in the freezer, was muffins. While I was pregnant, I made so many batches of muffins and put them in the freezer, and it was just a lifesaver while I had a very small baby, because you microwave them for 45 seconds and they're delicious and fluffy and fresh. Moving on to lunch, soup freezes really well. If you know that your family is not going to want to eat soup 3 nights in a row when you've just made a big batch of butternut squash soup, for example, eat it for one night and then put it in containers and put it in the freezer. I love these these takeout containers you sometimes get. They freeze really well. They're very sturdy, and I just wash them and reuse them over and over again. Also like to pre-make things like that are a little fiddly, like these are chili rellenos that I roasted the chilies, I stuffed them with cheese, and then I froze them, and now all I have to do is batter them and fry them. And then here's an example of something that, this is more of a dinner, now we've moved into dinner. This is a turkey pot pie. This one has no crust, so I will have to make a crust or biscuits, but I also make ones that have pie crust on them already, boop, right on top. Put it in the oven totally frozen, and then it does take about an hour to cook, but not too bad. So those are like kind of pre-made things that I like to do. I also like to just freeze the ingredients themselves. So proteins, I freeze a lot of ground beef, shredded chicken, black beans. They're great to just be able to pull them out, throw them into something super quick, like quesadillas. I also make sauces. Everybody talks about freezing pesto. This is also onion masala. It's an ingredient that there's a website called My Heart Beats that she's got great recipes. And this is sort of like onions and spices and tomatoes and garlic and ginger, and you just freeze it all together, and you can drop it into a pot of lentils, and it's amazing. Pasta. Who knew you could freeze pasta? You can. Just freeze it. Little pieces of pasta, and then you defrost it with some tomato sauce, and your kid has dinner in 5 minutes. It saves so many hangry meltdowns. It's amazing. This is just cilantro that I froze, and I can throw into soup. Great way to use up those cilantro instead of letting it get goopy. Lemon juice in a lemon bag. I didn't really talk about reusable Ziplocs, but they're great. You can also wash these. So I wash these out and then reuse them again. And of course we need to end the day with something sweet. Freeze your cupcakes. Make a batch of cupcakes. You don't want to eat all 12, right? So put half of them in the freezer. And then in a couple of months or a couple of weeks, you've got a cupcake. And it's great. Also, don't forget about the lemonade. Just lemonade syrup in these cool little containers. And your future self will thank you so much for making just a little bit extra, or putting your leftovers in the freezer instead of letting them get funky in the back of the refrigerator. Don't think you can freeze it? Give it a try.